Good people, if you search acromegaly, what is acromegaly? The rare disease acromegaly, welcome to the channel. Maybe you've just been diagnosed with acromegaly, know someone who has it, or you're just curious. Stick around. You're in the right place. Today is story time. My acromegaly story. I'm going to share my story with the idea that those of you who are open to it, who have acromegaly, or even another rare disease, will be open to coming on my channel and sharing your story as well. I can be contacted via email at talkingacromegalywithtony@gmail.com. I'm hopeful that my story will help motivate, uplift, and enlighten others with whatever they may be going through. Because of acromegaly, I've met some of the most amazing people. I've had the opportunity to share my story in front of hundreds of people and have had some really cool experiences. I'm sharing my experience of living with acromegaly with the thought of giving hope to others who also live with it or may have a similar story to mine and may have difficulties dealing with it. Because I wasn't always open to talking about this or even dealing with it. I just wanted it to go away. However, I had to realize it wasn't just going to go away, and I had to deal with it before it dealt with me. So the goal of this channel, for me as an advocate of acromegaly, is to bring more awareness to it, also to help with early diagnosis, with the idea that that would lead to a better quality of life for those of us living with it. My diagnosis, for the most part, went pretty smoothly. I didn't get undiagnosed or misdiagnosed for years like other stories that I've heard. Because for the most part, I kind of self-diagnosed myself, although I never mentioned it to a doctor. Let me explain. The year is 2013. I'm at my wife's bedside during a brief hospital stay. So I decided to turn on the television. And the Dr. Oz show had literally just started. Dr. Oz says, today's show is about acromegaly. He then introduced the guest. The guest goes on to say he was diagnosed with acromegaly and that he had a brain tumor because of it. And the doctors wanted to go inside his head and remove it. I thought to myself, wow, poor guy. He then goes on to explain his symptoms. And I go, Then Dr. Oz mentions a few other symptoms. I then go, wait a minute. All these strange things that have been going on with me for a while now are some of the same things that these two guys have just mentioned. You know what? I think I've got acromegaly. And I just left it at that. So for the next 2 years, my hands, which had already gotten big, kept getting bigger. And my feet, which had already gotten big, kept getting bigger as well. I've also got this constant daily thought that I may have a brain tumor that I haven't mentioned to anyone, that I'm extremely scared about. On top of that, I'm extremely tired all the time and my joints hurt. Fast forward to January 2015. After having a few different locker room conversations with a couple of guys a few years older than me that I played in a 40 and over men's basketball league with, they convinced me it was time to get a checkup, that I should start paying closer attention to my health, being over 40 with a family. So I'm 42 at the time and didn't have a primary care doctor. I called my health insurance and got a list of in-network primary care physicians to call for an appointment. All I wanted was a physical. So I just picked the doctor that can get me in for the earliest appointment, which turned out to be for a month later, near the end of February. Okay, the day of the physical comes, and it's just an average doctor's appointment. We talk, I answer all the general questions about my family's medical history, my medical history, how I'm currently feeling and all that stuff. I didn't mention anything about acromegaly because I wasn't sure about it and I didn't want any parts of it anyway. So the appointment's finishing up, and I'm feeling really rushed. The doctor sends me to the lab for some blood work, and in parting ways, he says, "It seems like you're a pretty healthy guy. I'll be in touch when the results of the blood test come in." The following week, I get a call from his nurse, who says all the blood work looks good. Would you like to set up an appointment to come back in a year? I said yes.
Yes, of course, yes.
And we did just that. Keep in mind, I'm brushing off what I now know were acromegaly symptoms. I was telling myself I was having this crazy fatigue and slight joint pain because I had turned my workout out.
I don't think that's how it works.
I was putting in more hours at work, raising a family, and on top of that, I'm getting older. And man, life was just lifing. Deal with it. I'm even convinced myself my hands and feet were getting bigger due to muscle and weight gain.
Wait, does that even make sense?
Believe me, I know that sounds crazy.
Thank you for that.
Let's move forward a little bit more. It's now July 2015, and I'm not enjoying the summer at all. I've got this constant pain in my right hip. It wasn't overly painful, more so just annoying. Also, my feet had enlarged so much that I couldn't fit my shoes anymore. In particular, my Jordans. That was the last straw, I thought to myself. Something's got to be done about this. I got to figure this out. I got to figure out what's going on with me. My shoes play a big role in my life. I mean, I really like them. At the time, I had a collection of Jordans, Timberland boots, Nikes, and a host of other shoes. But the fact that my Jordans didn't fit was pretty depressing. My actual shoe size is a 12. But back at this point in time, my shoe size had grown to a size 14 EE.
What does that even mean?
EE is like double wide, and Jordans don't come in EE sizes. Trust me, I checked. So I spent a lot of time wearing work boots, flip-flops, and Crocs. I absolutely hated that. Now, back to my hip pain. I called my primary care doctor back to set up another appointment to check out my hip. Again, it's July. They can't get me in until the end of August, so I just had to wait. Finally, the appointment comes up, and I'm meeting with my primary care doctor for the second time. During our first appointment back in February, remember, I said I felt rushed. So I'm really not liking this guy too much during this appointment. I explained that I'm here for an annoying pain in my right hip. He suggested I get x-rays of both hips and also wanted me to get a brain MRI. I said, "So wait, doc. You may have misunderstood me. I said I got a pain in my right hip. Why do you want me to get an MRI on my brain?" He then said, "Mr. Austin, I clearly understood what you said, but as a precaution, I'd like you to get a brain MRI." At this point, in my mind, I was like, cool, whatever, dude. I really don't like you, but I'm going to do this anyway.
Don't make this difficult.
The appointment for the hip x-rays came around, and I go in and get that done. I get a call from my primary care doctor a week later saying that the results of the hip x-rays are in, and he wants me to come in.
I wonder why.
He goes on to say that my right hip is basically bone on bone, and that my left hip is not as bad, but it isn't very good. Furthermore, I'll probably be needing both hips replaced at some point in the future. I couldn't believe it. But he was right. Eventually, I did get both hips replaced. Next up, the MRI. This part of my story, I had to give its own title, because the experience of taking my first MRI, which actually led to my second MRI 2 days later, could have been an entire video of its own. This part is funny. You're really gonna like this part. So I'm laying on the table, and the nurse puts my head in the brace. She then starts the table and I enter into the MRI machine. After about 20 minutes, I start to freak out. I'm breathing heavy, I'm sweating, and then I open my eyes. Instantly, I feel like I'm in a casket. I go into an absolute panic. I press the button to get the attention of the technician. The technician then says, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, let me out." She said, "Mr. Austin, you're doing fine. Everything's okay." Now I'm kicking and screaming. "I'm not okay. Let me out of here." She comes in and let me out and says, "In your paperwork, you mentioned that you weren't claustrophobic." I said I didn't know I was, but I'm not going back in there. We start to walk out, and then she starts to tell me there's some medication that I can get from my doctor to help me relax so that I can get through taking an MRI. Would I like to reschedule and do that? My response was yes. So she stops at the front desk with me and explains to the guy working there what just happened and that I'd like to reschedule. He says someone just called and canceled an appointment for 2 days from now. Would I like to take that appointment if I wanted it? Otherwise, the next appointment wouldn't be for another month. So I took the appointment for 2 days later. I returned 2 days later with the medication from my doctor. As I'm sitting in a waiting room, and the technician from 2 days ago comes in to get me, I tell her that I took the medication that I got from my doctor, and I'm ready to go. You're not going to believe what she says next. Here we go. She says, "I can give you some headphones to listen to some music if you like, if you think that'll help. Or we have some virtual reality goggles that I can give you to wear and you can watch a movie. The only thing is, they don't have any sound." My thought was, you couldn't tell me that the first time I was here? But my response was, "So can I listen to music and watch a movie?" She says, "Yes, you can. What kind of music would you like to listen to?" My answer, smooth jazz, preferably Kenny G. She then says, "We only have 4 movie choices." At this point, I don't remember what the other 3 were, but I chose Finding Nemo. The MRI took about an hour, and I did great. Fact is, I wasn't even ready to go. I was disappointed I couldn't finish watching Finding Nemo. Turns out, it was a really good movie. 2 thumbs up from me. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you go and see it. Check it out. About a week later, I get a voicemail message from my doctor's office telling me the results of my MRI are in and that I need to call back as soon as possible to set up an appointment to discuss it. My first thought was, you need me to call back as soon as possible? Sounds like bad news to me. So I didn't call back. The entire week after taking the MRI, my mind was racing. Now keep in mind, I wasn't even sure that I even had a brain tumor, but in my mind I did. A cancerous one on top of that. Let me explain. My mom had lung cancer, and my sister had kidney cancer. And my thought was not only did they find a brain tumor, but I would have a cancerous brain tumor. Right now, it's the 3rd week of October, and a few more days have passed. I've successfully blown off 4 more calls from the doctor's office. I just wasn't mentally prepared for that conversation at the time. Eventually, my plans were to call back and deal with this at a later date. The first of the year, preferably. Look, my birthday is in November. Soon thereafter, the holiday season starts. The last thing I wanted to do was to be stressed out over some new medical issue during the holidays. Little did I know, my doctor had other plans. This guy started to play hardball. I hadn't received a call from him or his team for a while, so I thought they had given up. However, now he decides after a couple of weeks to call my emergency contact. And who is my emergency contact, you ask? My wife. He gets her all in a frenzy, so now I gotta call back. The fact that I had went to get a brain MRI, not once, but twice in the past month, hadn't come up yet in any of the conversations between my wife and I. In other words, she didn't know.
That wasn't a good idea. Clearly.
This story will go in a totally different direction if I go into the conversation my wife and I had about why I hadn't told her that I had a brain MRI and didn't mention it to her. So, I'm not going to even go down that road. But anyway, I called him back, set up an appointment for a couple of days later, and boom, you guessed it. I got diagnosed with acromegaly. I'm so thankful for that doctor. He told me that at the appointment about my hip pain, that based on my appearance, in particular the size of my hands and feet, that he thought I might have acromegaly. However, he didn't want to alarm me. That's the reason he wanted me to go take a brain MRI. He said that it's so rare and he knew very little about it, and each of the other 2 times in his career, he had patients take an MRI to check for it, they didn't have it. He then reached on his desk and handed me a referral for an endocrinologist and one for a neurosurgeon. By the first week of December, I had both of those appointments set for the doctors. I first met with the neurosurgeon. He told me that he had performed hundreds of these surgeries, and he was considered one of the best in the nation at performing them by many medical professionals. He and an ENT doctor worked as a team in removing pituitary tumors. And by going through a patient's nose, he also had my brain MRI results. And he began in detail to explain those results to me. He pointed to the imaging and said, "There's your tumor. It's 2.7 centimeters. I said, "Excuse my ignorance, doc, but how big is that?" He said, "Oh, about the size of a peanut." The entire time he's explaining this to me and this surgery process, I remember sitting there thinking, I can't believe I'm going through this. I'm in a doctor's office, a neurosurgeon at that, talking about me having a tumor removed from my brain. I was in a daze. I was thinking there's no way I'm about to have brain surgery. I'm just going to be walking around with a tumor in my brain. At that moment, the doctor said something that woke me up out of that daze, that immediately made me reconsider. He said that after the surgery, many of the symptoms that patients with acromegaly have return to normal, like the size of their hands and feet. I then said to the doctor, so there's a possibility that if I get this surgery, that my feet could return to my normal size 12? He said yes. Suddenly my attitude changed. As crazy as this sounds, I thought to myself, if I could fit back into my Jordans, this might be worth it. The appointment is coming to a close. The doctor then asked me, would you like to schedule the surgery? This is very important. You need to get this done ASAP. He looks forward to helping me. I said, Doc, I'll get back with you later. So the appointment for the endocrinologist comes around. And now I'm sitting in her office. She starts in detail to explain acromegaly to me. Growth hormone levels, IGF-1, A1C, and a whole bunch of other stuff at the time I didn't understand. She goes on to say that brain surgery should be our start and gives me the best shot at getting better. How do I feel about that? I then said, I had an appointment with the neurosurgeon last week, and he explained the process to me so I'm open to it. She then scheduled me for blood work and a return visit to her office to discuss the results for the blood work the next month. Then the appointment ended. I immediately go to the on-site lab, get the blood work done, and I'm out of there. The appointment rolls around to go over the results of the blood work, and I'm back in her office. It's mid-January 2016 right now, and I'm mad. Mad about all of this, mad at life. I felt so alone. I'm going through this process, and I really hadn't talked about it to anyone at all. I kept my wife up to date with what was going on, but that was it. The doctor comes in and starts to go over the results of my blood work. She said my IGF-1 was 1400, and after this appointment, I should schedule the surgery to get the tumor removed. Now, the next thing she said really surprised me. After going over the rest of my blood work results, she turns her computer screen towards me so that we both could see it. She went on to Google and then typed in medications to treat acromegaly. So in a confused yet concerning tone, I asked her, "Doc, you don't know what medications are used to treat acromegaly?" She said acromegaly is a very rare disease, and many doctors never treat a patient with it. In my 30 years of practice in medicine, you're the second patient I've treated who has it. And the first patient was within my first 3 years. None of the other 3 endocrinologists we have on staff here have ever treated a patient with acromegaly. She went on to say, "We'll start medication after surgery once we see where your IGF-1 level is. The hope is that it will drop significantly after the tumor is removed. So schedule the surgery and call me back to let me know when it is." Then I left. Over the next 2 to 3 weeks, I remember being very unproductive. I just went to work and went home. By this time, I had my wife totally up to date with what was going on. Like me, she didn't know what to expect, but she was totally supportive. It's near the end of February now, and I sit my 3 sons down and explain to them that Dad will be having brain surgery to get a tumor removed. At this point, their ages are 20, 16, and 13. I think it was a lot for them to digest, but they took it well. They had a few questions. Some I had answers for, some I didn't. But I assured them I would be in good hands and everything would be okay. I then told my sister, a few other family members, and a handful of close friends. However, I hadn't had any communication for a while with my neurosurgeon or my endocrinologist. I had gotten a couple of calls from both their offices, but I didn't return any of them. In fact, I had no contact with them throughout the months of both February and March. So April rolls in, and I start to get my business in order with my job, meaning short and long-term disability, FMLA, etc., etc. It took the entire month of April, but I finally got everything in order at work. And now, I'm ready to actually schedule the surgery. This part of my story went by really fast, more like a blur. So listen, it's Monday, May 2nd, 2016. I remember it like it was yesterday. I called my neurosurgeon to schedule the surgery. I speak with someone, one of the nurses in fact, who I had a brief conversation with. And she says she'll give me a call back later today or tomorrow with a date to perform the surgery. The next day, about 4 p.m., I get the call. "Mr. Alston, your pituitary surgery is scheduled for Monday, May 16th. We'll contact you at a later date with more details and an exact time for you to arrive and an exact time for the surgery." Here is where I take a break and get away from my story for a moment. Look, I want to thank you for watching and hanging out with me up until this point. If you've just been diagnosed, or maybe you've been living with acromegaly for a while, this is what not to do. It took me entirely too long from my diagnosis to the time I actually had surgery. Don't wait. Start the process and get treated. I'm blessed and extremely thankful to God that my condition didn't worsen. My tumor could have gotten bigger. My organs could have enlarged. A number of different things could have happened. But by the grace of God, nothing changed. I was a bad patient. Don't be like me. Now back to my surgery. Surgery was a success. I don't know how long it lasted, but I was sure happy to wake up from it. My surgery team didn't get it all out. Just a little bit is left. However, it went very well. There weren't any complications during the surgery. The one thing that is different for me post-surgery is every now and then I get a headache. Headaches in the beginning weren't one of my symptoms. I almost never got them. Before surgery, anyway. Okay, so I was discharged 4, maybe 5 days later. I don't remember exactly, but I had a very comfortable stay. Now I'm going to fast forward a little bit and go into my post-surgery care, AKA me being a bad patient. My follow-up appointments with the neurosurgeon and the endocrinologist started about 3, maybe 5 days after being released from the hospital. I stayed a little lightheaded for quite a while, which I expected. So of course I stayed in bed. The appointment with the neurosurgeon was first. I actually met with both the neurosurgeon and ENT. We talked about the procedure, went over the imaging, about what I should expect next, and about future appointments. Then I left. I only went back for maybe 2 other visits after this one with my neurosurgeon. Okay, there were others scheduled. I just didn't go. I said to myself, I feel fine. It's too much of a hassle to keep going to these appointments. In hindsight, that wasn't a very good idea. Only by the grace of God, nothing changed, nothing happened to me. But I should have let the doctor release me and not release my doctor. Don't be like me. This is another example of me being a bad patient. So a couple of days later, I go see the endocrinologist. She tells me that my IGF-1 is now 900 after surgery, which is still too high. And she goes on to start me on cabergoline and octreotide delorean. The cabergoline is a once daily pill. The octreotide is a shot that she said I'll have to take, give myself 3 times a day. She also mentioned that I could possibly be on some type of medication to treat my acromegaly for the rest of my life. I didn't like that part. I was truly disappointed. Right now, I'm going to summarize my time with this endocrinologist. I stayed with her for about a year. I did the 3 shots of octreotide every day up until my next appointment, which was about 4 months later. My IGF-1 dropped down to 600. She was happy that it was trending lower, but it wasn't low enough. I mentioned at this appointment that it was extremely difficult and annoying taking 3 shots a day. She gave me a higher milligram dosage and only one shot per day. I started off really good about the first month. Then I began to miss a day here taking a shot, miss a day there taking a shot, and before you know it, I stopped taking those octreotide shots altogether. I kept taking the cabergoline. That was easy. It was about at this time, something very significant happened. Okay, the job that I was working at the time gave us a once-a-year allowance to purchase new work boots. I went to the store to realize my foot had actually gotten smaller. I initially tried on a size 14 EE, which is the shoe that I walked through the door with. Exact same size. It was way too big. The salesman then said, "Let me measure your foot to see where you're exactly at." He then said jokingly, "Where do you get a size 14 EE from? You're a size 12. I was so happy, but I couldn't believe it. I didn't notice my feet had gotten smaller. My hands were still big, and they still are, but my feet went back down. So I rushed out of the store with my new size 12 work boots, rushed home. It was only one thing left to do. That's right. I needed to see if I could fit my Jordans. I ran in the house, burst open my closet door, and put on my favorite red, black, and white Jordan 1s. They fit perfectly. I felt like a kid on Christmas Day. All I kept saying was, "I can fit my shoes. I can fit my shoes." Hey, at the time, it was a big win for me. I felt normal again, if that makes sense. Some of you can relate to this, I'm sure. Let's fast forward to my next appointment with my endocrinologist. I couldn't remember the last time I had taken my octreotide shot. I wasn't motivated to take them. I couldn't remember to take them. I didn't want to take them. And my blood test showed just that. My IGF-1 level had gone up to a 725 from a 600. Yeah, this was behavior of a bad patient times 10. The doctor explained to me the importance of taking my medication correctly, and I assured her moving forward that I would. She then said I needed to get an MRI before our next follow-up appointment and also a colonoscopy. The next appointment with her was in December 2016. I remember this very well because this was the last time seeing her. Here's why. I had gotten the brain MRI and everything was good with that. No changes. What was remaining of the tumor hadn't gotten smaller. However, it hadn't gotten any larger either. So that was good. I had gotten a colonoscopy. And by the way, this was my first colonoscopy and I had 13 polyps. People with acromegaly tend to have a lot of polyps. Mine were all benign, so that was cool. But my IGF-1 hadn't moved, still at 725. Look, y'all, I was tired of taking that shot. My shoes fit. I felt fine. Life was good. However, she seemed disappointed in me. Over time, we had actually become friends. We were learning about acromegaly together. I don't like disappointing people, and that part bothered me. She cared, and I knew it. The appointment ended, and I left. The next time my acromegaly was addressed was December 2017. So for a year, I didn't see any type of doctor regarding it or take any medication to treat it. Honestly, from time to time, I would forget I had it. But believe me, it didn't forget it had me. In June 2017, a good friend of mine passed away from a heart attack. He was 50 years old. He was a married father of 3, just like me. I had a conversation with one of our mutual friends, and I said he was one of the healthiest guys that I had known. If this could happen to him, it could certainly happen to me. I actually have a medical issue. This guy didn't have anything. I started to research acromegaly again at this point. I had actually stopped researching it shortly after being diagnosed. I started to feel like I was being selfish. I'd always said that I would take care of my family, but started to think I can't do that if I'm not taking care of myself. Acromegaly is going to do what acromegaly does. I have to be proactive and do what's medically needed to fight back. And I wasn't doing that. I had to remember my why. Why I wake up and go to work every day. Why am I able to stay motivated and focused on bettering myself? My why was my family, my wife, and my kids. And I am not going to let them down. So it's time for me to pay more attention to acromegaly. I didn't realize it when it was going on, but for about 4 months, I was having some new symptoms. Before surgery, I didn't get headaches, but now I did. Also, what I now know is brain fog or acro fog, I had that too. I was a very successful basketball coach on the elementary school level, the high school level, and the postgrad level as well. I even ran my own AAU basketball program for years. However, around this time, acro fog led me to stop coaching. I couldn't remember the offenses or the defenses that I taught my players. I sometimes couldn't remember their names. No one knew it at the time but me. So I just bowed out gracefully at the first chance I got. One day in August 2017, while researching acromegaly online, I ran across the Acromegaly Support Facebook group. I answered a few questions and then joined the group. Later that day, I got a DM from one of the members. You know what? I'll just call her Judy. She was one of the nicest people I had ever met, by the way. She asked me a couple questions and then said, "Welcome to our family." I felt so special, so included. I hadn't felt that way in a long time. I told her I needed an endocrinologist in the Chicagoland area who was familiar with acromegaly and had actually treated patients who had it. And she did just that. I've been seeing the same endocrinologist for 8 years now. He's fantastic. He truly changed my life. Shout out to Dr. Wall. I take my shot every 28 days, along with some other medications. My IGF-1 is in range at 239, and all is well. Also, I'm a much better patient now. In fact, I'm a good patient. My doctor listens to me, and I listen to my doctor. We work together on my treatment, and that's important. Oh yeah, let me quickly touch on my hips. I got bionic parts now. Back in January 2020, my right hip was replaced. And in June 2020, my left hip was replaced. And now, based on my x-rays, my knees and my shoulders aren't far behind from being replaced as well. But trust me, I'll get through it. Support is the name of the game if you've got acromegaly. And I've got a lot of it. A few good sources of support online that I use are the Acromegaly Support Facebook group, acromegalyreality.com, and chroneticare.com, just to name a few. Accepting and managing this disease became much easier for me once I started to talk about it. I strongly encourage people to get it off your chest, get it off your mind, talk about it. Trust me, you'll start to feel better, at least mentally. I did. Hey, thanks for hanging in with me today. If this helped you in any way, drop a comment, share it, like it, and hit that subscribe button. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, take care of yourself and stay strong. You got this.